Why is there a second one? Derogatory. Also, every time I look at Bubsy, I think of a squirrel. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm insane. He's supposed to be a bobcat. Bubsy the bobcat. Whenever I look at him, I think of a squirrel. I think I'm losing my mind. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, Bubsy 2. Bubsy 2 was actually planned before the first game came out a few months earlier, to be exact. Even though it's not really exact at all. It's just a few months before the game came out, it was planned. That's not really exact. Anyway, after the first game came out and was a success, believe it or not, they decided to go into full production on the second game. The second game then released in October of 1994 on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. The game released to relatively high reviews. But do I agree? Hi, I'm Warren Klebs and I fell off. This intro is extremely short. There's not really much to talk about. It's just standard game practice. The first game was good, so they decided to greenlight another one. Like, wow. I guess something that is interesting is that the main person who was inspired to make the original Bubsy wasn't part of this project. And you'll definitely see how that's a negative, but what can you do? Where was I? Oh yeah, I'm Warren Klebs. This is the worst platformer ever made, a series where I try to find the worst platformer ever made for my own amusement. But for now, let's start with an overview of the game. Though I will be comparing it out quite a bit to the first game, so if you want to learn a bit more about that game, I do have a video on that as well. I don't do sponsorships on this channel, so I guess that's my own first self-sponsorship, maybe? It's more of an ad for the old video, for my own video. Whatever, let's start this. This game plays almost exactly as the same as the original Bubsy. By that I mean the goal is the same. Find the end level goal, which in this game is a giant marble, as opposed to the yarn ball in the previous one. This is where you might start to notice the massive changes in the vibe of the game compared to the first one to this one. The yarn balls in the first game, now they're marbles. The original enemies, the woolies in the first game, now they're pigmen, which I honestly think is worse. I prefer the original woolies even though they look kind of funky. The pigs are just kind of like humanoid pigmen. That's kind of boring. It's not really inspiring. In fact, not being inspiring is actually correct. This game has no inspiration. Nothing. When I was playing this game, I didn't feel anything coming from it at all, unlike the original, where I could feel that there was some inspiration and passion that the developer had put into the game. When I beat the original Bubsy 1, I still had some of the tracks stuck in my head days after I beat it. I don't remember a goddamn thing that happened in Bubsy 2. I just have the script and notes here. Getting back on track, speaking of tracks, like music tracks, in Bubsy 2, like I said, I just don't find them as interesting as the original. Like here, I'll do a comparison. Listen to the original Bubsy track, and then listen to the sequel.
I like it.
Do you kind of see what I mean? I don't find the music in this game that interesting. I did find one track interesting, but that was just me being weird, and I'll show that off later. Though, as always, I do have to give credit where credit is due. This is one of the first games ever made to have dynamic music. I don't think it's the first, it probably isn't, but it was credited as being one of the earliest ones to do it. What I mean by that is the music changing its tempo when stuff in the game happens. Like in Devil May Cry, the higher your rank is, the more amped up the music gets, kind of like that. But in this game, whenever you run fast as Bubsy, the music adds more stuff to the track the faster you go. Though unfortunately, even though I said it's cool that they did this, and it's awesome that they're one of the first games that did this, unfortunately, all it really does is speed up the tracks. It's not really exciting. To summarize, I felt nothing playing this game. In fact, I'm not the only one that thinks this. The original developer and creator of the original Bubsy said that the new developers did not understand the original vision of the game, which, to put crudely, was inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know why I said crudely. I think I was going to say ripped off, but that's kind of mean, even though that's what it kind of was trying to be. The original Bubsy proved this. It had levels that at least attempted to be big and have multiple paths and work with Bubsy's high speed. It obviously wasn't the greatest if you watched the previous video, but I could see that they tried. And I feel like if the original developer was actually on board with doing Bubsy 2 and actually made Bubsy 2, the improvements probably would have been absolutely insane. But unfortunately, we have new developers and that didn't really happen, though there are some improvements I will go over. In Bubsy 2, the improvements we got range from new weapons that we can use, which is cool, and being able to take 3 hits instead of 1, which is a big, massive change. And that's it. Your health bar is shown on the top right by Bubsy's face. If Bubsy is happy, then you're good on health. If he is sad, then I am sad. Though that just means one more hit and you're dead. There are bandages around the map to help heal you, but I feel like there isn't enough of them really. Unfortunately, like the last game, if you get a game over, you have to restart the entire game. And sadly, I don't think there's actually a level select in this one, but correct me if I'm wrong. There are codes, however, for like 1 billion lives, and honestly, you can just easily farm lives in this game anyway, so it's not too bad. Though I'm going to go a bit deeper into the overview, and I think the best way to start that is by going over the positives that I actually liked. So let's start with the controls. So it's the same as Bubsy 1. D-pad is move around, you can jump, you can glide, all that stuff is still here. But now you can use weapons, which you find around the map, which is actually pretty cool. You have a gun that uses ammunition, which you can just use to blast enemies and has a decent range. It's pretty useful. The ammo, of course, is scattered around the map, but you get so much ammo anyway, I don't think I really ever ran out that much. You also have this portable hole, which brings you back to the hub world, which I will go over later, but it's as cool as this is a feature, but I didn't really ever need this. Like, you could have just had a thing where you could push start and then choose to go back to the hub world. Like, why make this an item? You also have a diving suit as well, but I had no clue what this actually did. You could apparently walk underwater with it, as water usually just instantly kills you, but I never really used it because you just walk so slow with it on. The last item is the Smart Bomb, which is probably the best item in the game. You use the item and every enemy on the screen just explodes and turns into a collectible. This is by far the best item and attack in the game. It just instantly clears the screen. So with all these items, you can actually find them lying around the levels, but you can also buy them with cards that are lying around the map. You get a shop at the end of the level that you can spend your cards on, which is cool. It's like a min-maxing system, kind of. You can sell your items and turn them into cards, and then use those cards to buy more items. You can choose what exactly you want, and I think that is really cool. Though due to the way the game is designed, I feel like the best strategy in this game is just to stack up on the bombs. Trust me. If things are going bad in your life, buy unregistered explosive ammunition. I actually like this item system. I just wish there was more, because realistically, you're only going to be really using the gun and the bomb, so that's 2 items. Now, I know some people have already probably wrote an angry comment and left saying, how dare you say this game controls like Bubsy 1? When I was talking about, like, using the D-pad and then pushing the button to jump, not how he actually controls in the game, like how it feels to control him. But that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about now, how it feels to control Bubsy in Bubsy 2. I didn't write this in the script, but I also think this is where the positives stop. Who knows, maybe we'll get to more later. Anyway, I said before that they didn't really make that many improvements to the game, and they made a few. The controls is one of them, kind of. In Bubsy 1, whenever you run really fast, then jump, and then push the other direction, it feels like you're pushing up against a wind wall that's trying to fight back at you. In this one, they did fix that, but it just kind of feels like you're on ice in the air, if that makes sense. I honestly think it's worse because it's hard to land on things because of how slippery it feels to move around in the air. I see a lot of people saying that it controls better, but I don't know, maybe it's just personal preference or something. I just don't like this. And I think I know why I don't like this. I feel like these controls would be better if the map was more like a Sonic map, if the maps were more like Bubsy 1 maps, where they're a lot bigger. This is kind of what I meant before, where I said the creator said that the developers of this game didn't really understand his vision, and I can kind of feel that here. This no longer feels like a Sonic game, it just feels like a generic platformer. The levels don't have these big long stretches that you can run around in, everything feels super short and compact. Though do not get me wrong, the levels are still ginormous, but it feels like you can only walk a few steps before you have to jump onto another platform. And because this game doesn't have these super long stretches, the way that Bubsy jumps and controls in the air, it makes it feel awkward to control in these kinds of levels, whereas I feel like it would have been better in the Sonic levels, which I previously said. Basically, the level design can be easily summarized for literally every single level in this game. Every single level in this game is a giant compact maze where you need to find where they hid the end goal with 500 enemies put all over the place in random spots. And with that, I've explained everything in Bubsy 2. Thanks for watching. We're not done yet. I'm not even doing the over-exaggeration thing that I sometimes do in my videos where I over-exaggerate an issue. That's legitimately how every single level feels. This game barely feels like an improvement over the original, because they tried to fix things, and in my opinion, them fixing things just made them worse. Which actually kind of makes me sad. I had a lot of respect for the first Bubsy game, which I know is insane saying on the internet. Though you want to know something funny? The one major complaint that every single YouTuber had about the first game was the fall damage. And they didn't take it out. It's still in this. I know YouTube obviously wasn't around back then, but did no one complain about the fall damage back then? I mean, if you watched my video, it didn't really bother me, but it should have just been gone. Did no one else say it needed to go away? But like the first game, it's the same in this one. If you glide, you just never die from it. So it doesn't really matter, but why is it in this? Also, if you didn't like Bubsy's quips in the first one, you might have more appreciation for him in this one, because he barely talks at all. I think he only really says, uh-oh, when you die or something. Anyway, that is a general idea and overview of Bubsy 2. Now, normally, this is the part of the video where we go through the entire game together, where I go into more details about the game itself and I go through each level one at a time, telling you about my experience with the level. But, well, how do I explain this? This game has 30 levels in it, which really isn't that bad. But wait, are you giving it another compliment? No. I'll get to why in a minute. This game actually has a hub world unlike the first one. There's an east wing and a west wing. Why are the wings on the wrong side? Am I going crazy? Anyway, each wing has 15 levels. You don't need to beat both to beat the game. You just pick one wing, do the 15 levels in that wing, and the game is beat. Each wing has 3 floors and 5 levels on each floor, totally 15. Which is more easily explained by the menu that you've probably already seen on the screen, which is the Genesis version. Now, this is great. This gives the player enough information on what exactly is happening. Now look at the Super Nintendo version. Black screen. What the hell is that? Like I was saying, each floor has 5 levels, and each of them have a different theme. There are 5 themes in the game. You have your Egyptian theme, airplane theme, music theme, fantasy theme, and a pirate theme. Wait, why is this a space level? If you look at the preview, this looks like you'll be on the sea with pirate ships. It doesn't look like you'll be in space. I mean, I get it, space pirates, but that's not what the preview really looks like. Anyway, you only need to beat 15 levels to beat the game, but for some reason, I beat all 30. What I'm trying to say is that even though I beat every single level in this game, I'm only going to be talking about the themes and style of each theme, instead of talking about each level one by one. Because like I said before, every level in this game is basically the exact same thing that is summarized to being a maze where you need to find the end goal hidden in the level where there are 500 enemies randomly spread throughout the level. And with that out of the way, let's finally start the game. The story of this game is yet again in the manual via a comic book, which starts with some frogs making fun of Sonic. Maybe they did know this was supposed to be like Sonic. Why'd they mess it up? Anyway, this game is about Bubsy taking his niece and nephew, and Arnold, who actually do appear in the game, which is cool, to a theme park made by Oinker. Oinker has basically made a theme park about stolen things and time periods, which people are forgetting about as he's stealing them, such as airplanes, music, the medieval times, Egypt, and he's putting them in an amusement park. Basically stealing parts of history for an amusement park called the Amazatorium. The niece and nephew of Bubsy break in and find out what he's up to. Arnold realizes the twins are gone and Bubsy and Arnold go and try to find them in the Amazatorium. Only after Bubsy starts complaining about the comic being too short and also using an entire page for his dumbass face. But that was a bad summary of the story. I actually really like the art in these comics, so if you want to actually read it yourself, you can just look up the Bubsy 2 manual.pdf on Google and just find it. I doubt you'll get in trouble for that. We start the game and get to the title screen, with Bubsy watching his niece and nephew messing around with some god-awful music playing, which I've already played before in the intro. If you couldn't tell, I'm playing the Super Nintendo version. I'll let you know some of the differences between the Super Nintendo and the Genesis version I found at the end of the video, but basically they're pretty much the same game. But after that, we get to the title screen, which again, is just not as good as the Genesis version. Like, come on. After, we get to choose what wing to go to. I chose west first because why not? After we get to the hub world, which is just a looping straight line, you can pick what level you want to do in any order, but you need to do all 5 of them on the floor to get to the next floor. I start with the Egypt theme, which is probably the least amount of fun I have had playing this game. Like I said before, every single level in this game is a maze, and they're just chock full of enemies all over the place. But the Egyptian levels, these ones feel like a labyrinth, which I mean, I guess that's the point, is you're in an ancient pyramid, but it's just not fun. The level has pyramid themings, obviously, but the enemies don't really theme themselves around the levels in this one. In fact, I think each theme has like one unique enemy in them. In this one, it's the mummy. And then for the rest of the enemies, they just fill them with whatever they came up with. But these levels essentially boil down to finding the correct switch on the wall and then flipping it to make another wall disappear to progress through the level. This means you're going to be doing lots of backtracking, going back and forth to see if the switch actually did anything or not. The only positive is that when you see a switch that you already flipped, you can already tell it's been flipped, so you don't need to switch it back again, and you already know you've been in that area. I'm going to be honest, I could not tell these switches on the walls were actually switches. They just look like background decorations. They just look like lion heads or something. I spent so long trying to figure out where to go in the first level. I just can't find it. A lot of stuff blends into the background in this game, and some of it actively harms you, like in these levels. There's this fire on the wall that stops your momentum, and it gives you this animation of Bubsy getting his ass burned. You don't take any damage from these, luckily, but why would you add this annoying mechanic? You could have just made it a background image. Why annoy the player? You may have noticed from the footage that all the levels have these arrows in them. These arrows point you to the goal, which is actually really cool and can be very useful. But it feels like more of a generic, it's somewhere over there, rather than an accurate guideline. And sometimes it just doesn't even point in the right direction. What? Like I said though, these levels were my least favorite because they were the most maze-like and most confusing and the most where the hell do I go kind of levels in the entire game. They took the longest to beat. As for the second theme I picked the Space Pirate level. Just make the entrance more look space-like, please. This level has low gravity jumps, which is kind of cool considering it's space. I don't actually have any complaints about this. That's neat. In fact, I think it slows down Bubsy a bit in the air. It actually makes him a bit easier to control. Again, this level, like the last one, has issue with background images harming you, and in this one, they really harm you. I wouldn't know if I would call this a background image, but it's barely noticeable. There are these spikes on the ground that just bend into the level, like, why? I know they're colored green, but they're still hard to notice, and because you're going to be jumping from up top a lot, you might just land on one. The space level also features switches that you sometimes need to find, but it's not that common. You also don't really need to beat the levels doing this. Sometimes you can just avoid them. But once you hit one of the switches, it usually just stops this instant kill electricity wall that can get in your way. You can go through doors in this theme as well, which if I didn't mention yet, almost every level has these doors that you can go through that put you somewhere. In this level though, if you go through a door, you might end up on a shoot-'em-up spaceship, which is neat, and it's a good change of pace. It honestly doesn't slow down the game that much. It's something new. The only annoying thing about it is because the levels are big and designed so that way you can go backwards, you might end up just going on a path afterwards, go back through the same door and have to do the shoot-up minigame thing again, which can get annoying if you keep going through the same door over and over again because you're lost, which will happen. Though because the space levels specifically have a lot of doors, I noticed something. Sometimes if you go through a door in any of these levels, you can sometimes get a bonus game hidden behind them. I believe there are only 2 in this game. The first one is this frog throwing game where you have to increase your power on the left to power up your throw strength and then push the shoot button to shoot the frog. This is something you also have to time because the frog on the bottom is moving left and right. You don't get to control that. You basically just want to hit everything on the board, which you only really get points for doing. In the other minigame, you play as Arnold, who gets stuck in a truck, and you basically just have to go through this maze where you need to get all the marbles. I also only think you get points for doing this. And because points don't really matter, I don't think, unless you want to have the highest leaderboard in Bubsy 2 for some reason. I know one of you do. What the minigames basically more so amounted to me is that for the frog one, I just played on my phone until the time limit ran out, because you're forced to stay in that minigame for like a minute and a half, sometimes 2 minutes. Oh, the ADHD Zoomer can't go 5 minutes without playing on his phone. What a surprise. Though with the Arnold and the truck one, you do have to control that one, but neither of these minigames aren't really that interesting. Like if you do it once, you're like, cool, but if you go through a door again and you get a minigame for the like 9th time, you kind of get sick of them. I mentioned before earlier in the video that I did like one of the songs in this game, and that was the truck one. And listening to it now, I have no clue why. It just sounds like penis music. Here, take a listen. But I believe those were the only 2 minigames in the game, and that was pretty much the space level. The third level I chose was the music theme level, which is basically full of trampolines. And if I'm being honest, I actually think I like these levels the most because, surprise, surprise, while they are still pretty big, they didn't feel as big as some of the other levels. And this also felt like it took notes from the first game, where there are more long stretches for you to run on as Bubsy. It gave you more room to run around and jump around. That makes it more fun to play. Though there's not really much that I can say about the music level in this. There's an enemy that shoots the enemy's a guitar and he shoots lightning bolts at you. I guess that's it. The fourth theme was a sky theme, and in every single sky theme level, you're in an airplane instead of on the ground shooting stuff, which again is a decent change of pace, because it's not that many times this happens. Like if you play one of the wings, it's just 3 times out of the 15 levels, so it's not really that bad. While you're in the airplane, you can turn around with the L or R buttons, which I didn't realize you could do until like way later, but that's just me being bad. The level is full of planes and many different aircrafts trying to kill you. Blimps, hot air balloons, and the such. I feel like the hitboxes in this level feel the most off. I feel like I'm being hit by something, but it doesn't really feel like I should be. I guess Bubsy knows more than I do. You would assume at first when you play this that pushing left or right on the D-pad is what's supposed to actually make you turn, and you would be correct. I feel like that's how it should have been, but it's not. Instead, it's actually used for going faster or slower. If you push the D-pad in the direction you're going, you can move faster. If you do the opposite, you move slower. But this is honestly fine. It lets you control how fast you want to play the level. There's nothing wrong with this at all. You get to control how fast you want to move. You can also, of course, push the shoot button to shoot a bunch of ammo, which is what you're going to be pushing most of the time, just to clear the way. But other than that, these are some of the smallest levels in the game, so getting to the end is pretty quick and pretty easy to find. On to the last theme, the fantasy theme, which is more like a forest to me rather than a fantasy world, considering it felt like I was climbing giant trees more than anything else fantasy related. Again, not really much to say about these levels. These are about as short as the music levels, and most of them felt fine to play. I still think I like the music levels a bit more because of one glaring issue. The spikes don't look like they're supposed to hurt you. They look like the top of a lamppost, but they do, and they're all over the place. This is another background image that harms you. Why? But that's pretty much the fantasy world, very similar to the music world, and they're not really terrible other than that one thing I said, because surprise, surprise, this theme also has long stretches of land. But that is the entire game.
I'm not done with you yet.
The game actually has bosses, except it doesn't. Let me explain. Once you beat all 5 levels, a door opens up which lets you find a boss. Let's say I beat all the levels on the first floor. I then unlock the door to the boss. I go in, it's just a rush of enemies from the game you have already seen. But you know what? That's fine. It's a first boss, it's just an enemy rush, it's supposed to be easy, sure, whatever, why not? Move on to the second floor. Beat all 5 stages, go to the boss, exact same thing. This isn't really hard, it just features a bunch of enemies that are exclusive to each world, like the mummy for the Egyptian world or the guitar for the music world. When a cube opens up, they show up and they shoot something at you and then they disappear. And then after that, another one pops up, shoots you, and then disappears. Rinse and repeat. When an enemy appears, that is your cue to just jump on them. That is all you do. Jump on them and avoid their projectile. I briefly mentioned that the enemies in this game don't have much variety. I want to go into that a bit more since we're talking about the rush of enemies and just enemies in general. I mentioned the unique enemy of this game is supposed to be the pigs. They are the main villains, which is true, and they do appear in this game, but I don't really like them as much as the woolies. But they made a bad thing about the previous Bubsy even worse in this one. The previous Bubsy game had woolies in every level, sure, And it would also have random shit like hot dogs and ice cream cones as enemies, but they would at least be themed to their levels. Like the carnival level would obviously have the ice cream cones and the hot dogs to go with the carnival theme. In Bubsy 2, it's just random shit in every level. Put a random kangaroo in a pyramid, who cares? I said before that each level has maybe like one exclusive enemy. Sometimes there might be two. It didn't feel like a lot. It just feels like the little bit of exclusive enemies, then a bunch of random stuff and the pigs in the levels. Anyway, back to talking about the bosses, if you would call them that. They're more enemies. Once you beat the second boss on the second floor, you get to the third floor, which has a slightly different level layout in the hub, but it's basically the same levels. Beat all 5 levels and you actually get to the final boss, which is actually different. The final boss will walk slowly at you and not really be a threat at all, but sometimes he'll shoot stuff at you, but you can easily dodge those. The most annoying thing that is somewhat threatening the boss does is he jumps super high at you. But what does this entail? Well, to beat the boss you need to constantly jump on him, but if you constantly jump on him, he'll jump super high and hit you because you're on top of him. So what I found is the best strategy that almost always works is you want to kind of jump on him a bit behind his head because he won't be able to jump at you. He will still jump, but don't get me wrong, he just won't hurt you. And because you won't take damage from this, it just makes this boss very, very easy. But after you jump on him legit like 30 times, why that many hits? His armor is removed and nothing else changes. Just jump on him a few more times and he goes down. Bubsy then proceeds to laugh at him and put him in a cell. And then he starts doing the mummy or whatever this dance is called. And he also randomly looks at you for a frame. I don't know why he does that. But that is the entire game. Tricked you again. There's still the other version, the Genesis version. I hated the Genesis for the longest time, but I'm starting to warm up to it. There's not really a joke here. I don't know why I put this in. This version has a far superior menu. I mean, obviously, the Super Nintendo one was just a black screen with text on it. Like, come on. But from what I've played, other than that, it's basically the exact same game with a slightly different graphics and, in my opinion, worse music to fit the Genesis. I'm not a version comparison YouTuber. I am far from that. But if you want to see a video on the main differences between them, there's a channel called Console Wars that made a comparison of them. Go check that video out. I'll put the link in the description. Because as I mentioned, I am a useless chud video essay guy. But that leaves the question. Is Bubsy 2 the worst platformer ever made? No, but it is a disappointing sequel that I don't think is very good. I have a strong opinion on this game now that I think about it. Bubsy 1 was made by a man who was inspired, who was passionate, and enthralled by Sonic the Hedgehog. He had a vision of a game he wanted to make. Bubsy 1, I don't think is a bad game. It's just kind of eh. But I felt like if he stuck with it and learned from his mistakes on what was bad from it, he could have made the sequel much better. This could have been an outstanding game, an amazing time. Unfortunately, we don't live in that timeline, and in his own words, as he said, the new team he wasn't included with who made Bubsy 2 didn't understand this vision, and in my opinion, they made a worse game in almost every way, which is a shame. I thought I would come out of these videos laughing, being like, haha, yeah, Bubsy sucks, dude. But this just made me come out of this being like, I wish there was a greater Bubsy game, but it sadly never came. I really do think this franchise has potential. Thanks for watching. PSP. Bubsy 2 for the Game Boy. What the hell is this? I'm playing this one on the Bubsy collection, and funny enough, the collection even says, out of all the games here, don't play this one. Is it really that bad? So this is a bit of a shorter segment, well, because the game is tiny. Though I actually did beat this one fully through. I didn't take a picture of that guy shirtless before beating it this time, but I actually did beat it. I also don't really have any fun facts about this game, though it did come out almost a year after the original in August of 1995, for some reason. I don't know why they decided to do that way later. I'm just gonna jump right into this. Once you launch the game, you get hit with the title, and in my opinion, because of the Game Boy soundboard, I actually don't really hate this. I like how this sounds like a Game Boy game. Maybe I'm just weird. Anyway, this game basically has the exact same songs as the console version, just Game Boyified. I know someone's gonna get pissed off at me for using those terms, but whatever. We go past the title screen, and this time we don't get a choice in what wing to play. There's only one wing, and instead of 5 levels on each floor, there are now 3. The space theme and the fantasy theme have been cut, leaving only the music theme, the flying theme, and the goddamn Egypt theme. So let's get through these, as they are slightly different than the console version. To start this off though, each level is going to be a lot smaller. They're still big, but they're not as big as the console counterparts, as, well, they obviously can't fit it all in the cartridge. They also do something huge here, where they don't spam you with hundreds of enemies, which, believe it or not, it completely changes the entire game. It's mind-blowing. I cannot understate how annoying it was in the console version that having like 500 enemies on the screen at once would bog the game down. Who would have thought? I don't even think they did this because they just wanted to get rid of the enemies because they thought it was annoying. They probably just did this to save space, but this changes the entire game. I legitimately think this is actually more enjoyable because all the enemies are just gone. Though do not worry, fellow Bubsy haters, I'll start complaining soon enough. Let's start with the first theme I chose, the music one. Again, pretty much the same as the console version. Everything is here. Yeah, there's really like nothing different. It's easier to run around because there are no enemies, but that's like for every level. So now that you've seen one of the levels, let me get this out of the way. This game looks like ass. It doesn't look nearly as good as the console version, but I mean, it's a Game Boy. Like, come on, give it that at least. Again, here, Bubsy has the same controls, except choosing an item is now the select button. He also doesn't have the diving suit or bomb anymore. Instead, he only has the go back to the hub world item. Oh, he also has a pie, which is basically the same as the gun. But if you have no weapon selected, you shoot a ball at the enemy anyway, which basically means you have infinite ammo, and that the pie is completely useless. So the only real item in this game is the go back to the hub world item. As for how it actually feels to control Bubsy, I was glazing the game a bit there, saying how much better it was with the lack of enemies, which is true, but actually controlling Bubsy brings this game down a ton. This is the worst I've ever seen. This might be one of the worst controlling platformers I've ever played. There is legitimately at least a 1 second delay to the movement, and he starts off by moving so slow. It's really bad. It's so hard to explain how bad it even is. It's like the game is fighting against you, and you're running up against a current. I hate this. If this game actually felt better to control Bubsy in, I actually might say this would be more enjoyable than the console version. But unfortunately, because of this, I don't know. It definitely brings the quality of this game down immensely, and I cannot understate that enough. But anyway, let's move on to the second theme. This is the air theme where we're in the plane again. The only difference is that since this is the Game Boy, which doesn't have an L or R button, you need to push select to swap directions. But that's basically it. There really isn't much of a difference here. I do tweak out at the end of this level though. Before I talk about the last theme, I'm going to take the time to talk about the bonus games in this one. The frog is the same, the truck is the same, moving on. For the Sphinx level, I actually think these levels are worse than the console ones. The console ones mostly revolve around you trying to find these switches. So if you get lost in a level and there's a switch flip, you think, oh, okay, I've already done that. Whereas the level design in the Game Boy version is kind of just 100 doors. There are just so many doors. One level took forever for me to beat because I just couldn't find the door that ended the level. It was the second door in the level that brings you to the end. There are like 20 doors after that door. What? There are also no directional arrows to guide you to the exit in this game either, so if you get lost, you're kind of screwed. These Sphinx levels in this version are a pain in the ass, so let's talk about something else that's also annoying. Fall damage. I think it's gone. They did it. However, in all of the Bubsy games so far, if you run fast and then run into a wall, Bubsy gets stunned in this animation for a bit, and you can't control him. It didn't happen to me that much at all in the console versions. But in the Game Boy version, it's so sensitive. It happened to me so many times. It's more annoying than the fall damage that people like to complain about. I cannot believe how annoying this is. You have to wait like 2 to 3 seconds for him to get up again. You don't take any damage. It's just a time waster. Even if you slightly move and just touch a wall, boom, you're stunned. Just remove it. Remove it from the original games too. I don't know why it's there. They also did the same thing as the console version, where they put random enemies in the levels rather than having them be a theme to the level themselves. More importantly, what are these? What are they supposed to be? But, like I said, those are 3 levels, and they are the same for every floor, just like the console version. No difference in what they do, other than being a giant maze where you need to find the end. That's every level in this game. Not really any new mechanics in the levels? Nothing. But, like the original, once you beat all the levels in the floor, you get to fight a boss and then progress to the next floor. And unlike the console version, there are no enemy rushes. It's actually a boss. It's just the final boss from the console version that you fight 3 times. You fight him once on each floor. There's no difference between them at all. Wow. Once you beat the final boss though, this game says good job and you get kicked back to the title screen. So that is 2 in 1. What did I think about Bubsy 2 for the Game Boy? Was it the worst platformer ever made? Sorry for the abrupt ending, but this video is too long. It had to be shrunk down to a cartridge. I don't know how to get this on here.